Next on public agenda, Mr. John Pittman Hey.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm here to register my objection and my opposition to the action that you took a couple of weeks ago in retaining the Butler Snow firm to take sides in this election dispute between the mayor and Sheriel Perkins. I think most of you probably know that I've had plenty of public disagreements with both parties, Mrs. Perkins, Mr. Perkins, the mayor, and as a matter of fact, I didn't vote for either of those candidates for mayor. I didn't get involved in any of their campaigns. I'm not been hired to represent any one of them in this election dispute, but I have known for many years, since around 2003, that the AG took the position that it was legal for the city to hire an attorney to come down on one side or the other in an election dispute, even though the city's not a party. But we all know that what's legal isn't necessarily what's right and fair and just. And I believe it's unfair and unjust for the city of Greenwood to take public resources, public funds, and weigh in on one side or the other of an election contest, which is basically principally between two people, the winner and the loser of the election. Basically, you've taken the city's money and you put that thumb down on the scale of justice and said, now let's have a fair fight. And I don't believe that's right. There's been a lot of times when there have been election contests in the history of Greenwood where the city council didn't come in with the public's money and weigh in on one side. When Mr. Fratesi sued Mr. Palmer in 1993, didn't anybody from the city come in and pay his legal fees? And he was the incumbent. And when Mr. Alfred Dean King sued Larry Thames in the late 90s, nobody came in to pay Mr. Thames's money, even though he was the incumbent. And when Mrs. Perkins filed a successful election contest against Mayor Smith, the city didn't come in and help Mayor Smith pay his legal fees or represent his side. And when Mr. Ellis filed a contest against Senator Jordan, didn't anybody come in from the city and help Mr. Jordan pay his legal fees, even though he was the incumbent? And when Dorothy Glenn was sued by Mr. Powell, didn't anybody come in from the city and help Ms. Glenn pay her legal fees? In fact, she ran out of money and lost her lawyer. So you're setting a terrible precedent by coming into this election and taking sides. And now I know there's going to be quibbling about whether you're paying the mayor's legal fees, but the fact of the matter is there's two tables in the courtroom. There's Ms. McAdams' table and there's Ms. Perkins' table. And Butler Snow is going to be sitting at one of those two tables. There's not going to be a third table. The city of Greenwood is not a party to this litigation. They're in there to try to defeat Mrs. Perkins' lawsuit. That's what their goal is. And you're spending public money to defeat her lawsuit. Now, why would you want to do that? Because what's important to the public and what ought to be important to the city of Greenwood as official policy is that we have fair elections, and that if there's any illegal conduct that took place, that it be brought out into the open, regardless of whether it changes the outcome or not. Don't you think the citizens need to know whether there were laws broken, regardless? Well, your lawyer, Butler Snow, has been steady filing petitions over there to stop the lawsuit so that the facts will never be heard in a courtroom. Now, I understand that if they're representing a private party, they're supposed to be vicious and slash and burn. But you would think that a lawyer representing the interests of the city of Greenwood with taxpayer money would have a higher ethical standard in terms of not trying to suppress public knowledge and public exposure of election laws that were broken. And believe me, there were election laws broken. I don't know whether they were intentional or not, and I don't know whether they made a difference. But my interest is in that the public be clear about what happened in the election, that wrongdoing that happened be exposed, and that if it made a difference, that justice be done. So I'm calling on y'all to rescind that resolution and let the parties duke it out. Now, the one last thing, people say that it's not fair to make Ms. McAdams pay because somebody made a mistake. It's just as unfair to make Ms. Perkins pay because somebody made a mistake. It's always unfair when somebody makes a mistake and screws up an election. It's unfair to both sides. It's unfair to the public. But that's not an argument for picking one side and helping pay the cost of their suit and harming the cause of the other side, putting that thumb down on the scales of justice. And it would have been just as wrong if the council had said, our city's interested in fair elections and we don't think it was fair, so we're going to hire Mr. Perkins to represent the city. You could have done that. It would have been legal. It would have been wrong. It would have been just as wrong as what you voted to do. So please reconsider and rescind that resolution.
Thank you, sir.